Hello, everyone. Margaret Levette back. Another woman who is on Woman Magazine's 25 Powerful Women to Follow the month of March 2021. Today, we're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, answering the question, are they merely terms that corporate America uses? Are they words that mean something to all of us? My conversation is with Janie Payne. She's the Vice President of Administration at Equal Justice Works. And she's revealing that these idioms mean something to all of us. Our conversation speaks on companies learning to lead their organizations in new ways. We all must become familiar with and stand ready to implement DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion.
Welcome to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. This podcast was created for the boomer woman leaving corporate, and now you're looking to reinvent yourself, become an author, an entrepreneur, a podcaster. Well, each episode will leave you with clarity. You will come away with the yes, I can and yes, I will reinvent myself mindset. So come on, let's do this. I'm your host, Margot Levette.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Another episode, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Well, today we are going to talk about something that is all up in the headlines. Some of us recognize it, some of us do not. But today's conversation is with Janie Payne. Now, she is a senior human resources and administrative professional with over 20 years experience. She has worked in both unionized and non-unionized environments. Now, why is this information important? Because today we are going to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, which is DEI, and change management. So welcome, Janie. Janie is the Vice President of Administration for Equal Justice Works. I want to say thank you for joining us here and bringing information about such a timely topic.
It is wonderful to be here, Margot. Wonderful to be with you, especially on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, which is a day of service.
Yes.
So very happy to be here.
Well, I tell you, it could not line up any better. Day of service, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, I don't want people to get caught up in those words. So, Janie, as they say, will you unpack? Give us some meaning, make it relevant to us today in corporate, out of corporate. Are these just terms that corporate America uses to for those that are in the know?
I think they're more than terms. I think they are words that should mean something to us as individuals. Not only do they mean something for corporate strategies, but for us as individuals, thinking about diversity and the difference that we bring to the table. Then equity is making sure that with that difference, I have the opportunity to realize my potential. It's realizing the potential of the individual. And then inclusion is making sure that my voice matters and is heard. So I look at that at the individual level. DEI is so meaningful as we think about our careers and having a meaningful experience in the organizations that we're in.
That's very important. Thank you for breaking that down, making it very relevant to all of us, because people will work in corporate and they'll feel like them and us. And really, what you bring to the table matters. So you wrote a very revealing, and I'm using my words I'm trying to find the right words, because I really, really enjoyed and learned from the publication, from the article that you wrote in LinkedIn. It was published in LinkedIn, excuse me, utilizing DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, to support the current work environment. Very revealing. It helps bring the management teams of corporate America, it helps them recognize different things about employees and the vendors, those that come in and everything that makes up that corporation or that company. I'm willing to bet that this information is working for major corporations and small businesses. I'd like to set the record straight on that also. The information that you're giving works for the major corporations and the small business that's in reorg. Am I correct on that?
That's absolutely right. And thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially now, we're at a time where there are very different perspectives about many things, about most things. And so creating a work environment where every employee can come and there's a safe environment to express their ideas, to share different perspectives, and creating an environment where perspectives can be embraced, I think is really critical more than ever before.
Would you say, and I don't want to belabor this at all, but I just want to ask the question, if we do not have these environments, then you have all the makings for a very explosive, toxic culture, which is what I think we see in society. Do you agree? Excuse me,
Yeah.
disagree? What are your feelings?
Yes, I think definitely when I look at the society now, I would say there is a lot of conflict. There's conflict because it's sort of if you win, I have to lose, rather than approaching it from a win-win situation. And I think that could show up in organizations. So as individuals, I think to be prepared and to make sure that we ourselves, the work begins with us. So how do we develop a skill in terms of emotional intelligence and being able to share our perspective, but at the same time, being able to navigate successfully in an environment where our perspective might not be readily embraced. We still, if we make the choice to work in that environment, we're still there. So what I'm saying is the ability to deal effectively with conflict, the ability to deal effectively with a toxic organization, if I find myself in that, I think is critical for the individual. And then for the organization, really working to create a culture where people's difference can be embraced. And that takes work. Cultural work and cultural change and transformation takes work and a strong commitment on the part of the organization.
Wow. You know what? That is, oh my goodness, work that is consistent and constant, I would imagine. Taking it back to your article, the article that was published in LinkedIn, you asked the question of leaders, how can management learn to lead without bias while respecting the diverse views and perspectives of every employee? Here we go. That's huge. But you do not, you say that exhibiting a neutral approach, this will be key. Now, just the question asked alone is huge. Now you're telling people you have to approach this with neutrality, but
Right.
you do not leave people hanging. You say that when the leadership embraces inclusion coaching, that's a start. You want to start to, as they say, unpack that idea.
Absolutely. So, for a long time, based on my experience, coaching has been something that's been offered primarily to senior management, folks that are in leadership positions. I think to the extent we can, with our budget constraints, we need to think about coaching beyond that top echelon of the organization. Coaching can be used, and using a coach to facilitate courageous conversations, to help the organization and people within it have courageous conversations and dialogue about very difficult topics. For example, I participated in a conversation at work when George Floyd was murdered. That was a very difficult conversation, but we created a safe space. There was a facilitated discussion, and every employee's voice had the opportunity to be heard. So having coaching and coaches who can support that kind of dialogue, I think really opens up, I think, a culture of openness, a culture of caring, a culture of respect.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that is major. When you spoke, I thought the first thing that I thought of, if corporations can embrace and really give that type of a coaching to everyone, the management team that is there, it's really going to cherry pick the managers, I would imagine, because some people are in management and they just don't have any business being there. So if you can't support and fit in and genuinely be a part of that type of ongoing coaching and training, I would imagine. You spoke of budget constraints, but this type of training, because of where we are, it has to be ongoing. I wouldn't think once a year, in my mind, once every a quarter or something like that. And if you can't have management that can come in and tamp down their own biases, or AI, then maybe that's not the place for them. Just my thought on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And organizations have to be deliberate about the managers, the people they put in managerial positions. So, yes, you may have managers that don't embrace what we're talking about, and the corporation really needs to identify who are the right people to be in managerial positions. Who are the people that are going to embrace the culture that we seek and promote the culture that we seek? We know that one of the reasons that employees leave an organization primarily is the relationship that they have with their supervisor, that frontline manager. That person is key to creating and operationalizing the culture of an organization.
That is so important. Really and truly, they are the face of that organization to that team of employees each and every day. Wow.
Exactly right.
I hope that people hear you on this because this is good stuff. This really, really is. I'm looking at your second thought for management. Develop effective internal communication approaches. So once we have the training to develop the effective internal communication, is that how the training continues? Is that how people continue to understand this is what management stands for, not upper management all the way down to us? This is how we operate at this company. Is that what that's all about?
That is exactly what it's about. So, communication is so critical. The messages that we send, messages that communicate the values of an organization. What's important? What's not important? What are the expectations around behavior? What do we pay attention to? What do we recognize? All of those things ring true in that strategic communication that comes as part of the organizational strategy. So I think those messages are very important. I think having a strategic communications plan that is deliberate, that speaks to, in our case, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the importance of it, how it lives in the organization, expected behaviors, so that people can consistently read about it and understand it's a value that's very high that we place in the organization. And as individuals, our voice really matters.
Gosh, that's powerful right there. Because I know so many times back in the day, say one thing and we see another. And that was just rampant. If you don't want to work here, they're hiring at Burger King. Just the ratchet way of speaking to employees. And it was this, them, and us. And so it is so good to see that see cultures move into it's us. If this company is going to survive, if we are going to continue on, it is us. And I have to watch what I say to you. I have to watch the way that I handle you. I have to make sure that there is no favoritism. And I know that that can be one heck of a hard thing for management. But
Yeah.
once again, cherry pick the management team because this is a tall order. And I think, Janie, tell me whether or not I'm correct. What are your thoughts on this? Society is going to dictate that companies they do operate with diversity, equity, inclusion, and strong guidelines. This is how we operate. Employees are going to be, they are going to know what the company stands, what stands for, how we operate, and there will be no gray areas.
That's
What do you
right.
think about that?
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that we're faced with in companies today is they're multi-generational, right? And so the generations that are coming now are really demanding that companies pay attention to things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, social justice, causes. I mean, they are committed to, and we know that employees are not in the past willing to stay in an organization that does not promote the values that they choose to be a part of. And so it just makes good business sense for companies to have the level of flexibility and be willing to grow in the area. So it's good for business. So very good for business. And there's been studies that talk about companies that embrace diversity, companies that embrace equity and inclusion do better. So there's that side of it. But also from the side of the employee, it's just a better place to be.
Yes. Very, you feel a sense of team. We are a team versus get back to the us and we, them, and us.
Yes.
Janie, do you find teamwork, the teamwork approach will always move the company further than us and them?
Oh, yeah. So early in my career, when I worked in the telecommunications industry, I was responsible for team-based systems and structures in a corporation. And I learned then the value of teamwork because providing the perspective of the team and having the team focused on the goals of that company really created remarkable results. When you have a team works in concert with one another, all towards an aligned and common goal. So I believe teamwork is critical. I also believe in order for teamwork to succeed, management, leadership has to be willing to share power. You have to be, so we're all part of a team. It's not leadership is at one place and the team is at another. How do we work in concert? How are we forging interdependency with each other all around how to succeed in the organization? I think teamwork is critical. Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. I really, really, and truly. Do you bring out? I'm looking at the time, and I don't want to just skirt over the rest of the insight that you bring from your article, utilizing DEI to support the current work environment. Those of you on LinkedIn, I tell you, go over and Janie Payne, Payne, be sure to pay attention, read, and implement what she's put in this article. And wrapping things up, Janie, I'm just thinking for those of us who really, there's no way that um, we can't retreat back from the way that companies are run these days. If we are going to be effective employees, if we are going to be effective vendors, we have to have a mindset shift that goes in tandem, works in concert with that corporation. So going into these various cultures, how do we best prepare ourselves? Because this diversity, inclusion, equity, it's ongoing. How do we continue to prepare ourselves to work in these cultures so that we are at our very best? We bring our very best. What can we do as on the outside coming in? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I believe it was Rosabeth Moth Cantor who talked about the change master. And a change master is a person who understands what their goals, their individual goals are, and can align those goals, find ways to align those goals with the goals of the company that you're in. So I think for us, in order to be successful as change agents, whether it be success in our careers, whether it be success in what we want to achieve, we need to figure out how strategically we can think about our own goals and objectives, our own skills, the things that we want to accomplish ourselves, and how can we complement that environment that we're in. And I think that takes work. I think that takes some deliberate thinking about it, thinking about opportunities within the company to grow. We're responsible for our own career. So many people go into an organization expecting that organization to navigate their career. No, looking for opportunities, continuing to grow. Self-motivation, I think, is key. But I like that term change master because we really are the architect of our own career book. And thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and leveraging the fact that it's critical on the agenda of our corporations, our companies today. So becoming our own expert around that and being able to dialogue about that, reading about the subject, creating relationships with others that are different than yourself. I think all of those things are important as we think about that navigation of our personal career.
Oh, wow. That is so rich. And the ownership goes back to us.
That's right.
It goes back to us. Gone are the days where, well, everybody cares about salary, that type benefits, that
Sure.
type of thing, of course. But in the big scheme of things, we don't go into corporations just for the salary and sit anymore and wait for that gold watch anymore. Those days went out with the industrial age. Would you agree?
I do. We go to realize our potential. And if we're finding that our potential is hindered, then we need to ask ourselves, right? Are we really in the right environment? Is this the right place for us? Trying to change a corporation, change a company, that's very difficult to do, right? And make it fit the way we think it should fit. But I think taking advantage of every opportunity that we're in to learn, to grow, to leverage our skills, and with emotional intelligence, navigating our career successfully, that's the key.
That EI, that's very important. A lot of people, that's a conversation that we're going to have also. That is very important. You're going to have to come back because, man, is that necessary in corporate America these days. Wow. Janie Payne, Vice President of Administration at Equal Justice Works. You are a very knowledgeable lady. I am so glad. If I'm going to have this conversation, I am so glad to have this conversation with someone who's been around a bit, who's seen it all. And you've seen corporations change, people change. And here we are, 2021. I don't like to timestamp anything, but here we are, 2021. And it's an exciting time to be alive and working in corporations and molding the cultures. So I'm looking at the time. What are your last thoughts on inclusion, equity, and diversity?
I would just say that with inclusion, equity, diversity, let's just keep it on the uppermost top of our minds, right? It is so important. We're always learning. We're always learning about difference. We can never achieve all of the information about what difference means. So I would say just be open to that as individuals. And I believe if we do so, it will make not only the companies that we're in better, it'll make the family environment better, and we'll feel better as individuals if we're open to different perspectives.
Open, open.
Openness is key.
Wow. Once again, I tell everyone they had better go to LinkedIn, read, take in Janie's article, utilizing DEI to support the current work environment. It's eye-opening. It is a true piece of literature that is going to help leadership, employees, vendors. So, Janie Payne, I sure thank you for being here today. Thank you a million times for making these words plain for all of us and keeping it at the top of our minds.
It was my pleasure.
Wow. I always have a hard time closing out good conversation. Everybody knows that, but we must. Janie Payne is going to come back because we couldn't begin to unpack everything concerning this ever moving, it's like a car. DEI, I think of it as a moving vehicle. So she's going to definitely have to come back. And you are going to have to listen to this episode over and over and over after you read her article. So with that said, thanks for tuning in. I'll be back next week, brand new episode right here. Her business, her voice, her conversation. Bye-bye now.
I want to thank you for listening to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Couple of things that I want you to do right now. Go to my website, pick up a copy of Her Business, Her Voice, Her Reinvention, how I went from game show hopping to international show host, author, and speaker in 1 year. Number 2, please freely listen to each and every episode. Share them out with your family, friends, the men in your lives. And then number 3, get in contact with me, one of the experts that have been on the show, because I want to make sure that you reinvent yourself. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode here on Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation.